I'll never forget that day. I was 16, a junior in high school, and it seemed like an ordinary Thursday morning. The kind where everyone drifts between classes half asleep, trying to survive the day until the bell finally lets you go home. My school was a modest building on the edge of town, with the usual creaky floors, narrow hallways, and a cafeteria that smelled faintly of bleach and old pizza. We had drills all the time, fire drills, tornado drills, even lockdown drills, but I never thought I'd experience a real one, not like what happened that day. It started in first period. Our teacher, Mrs. Holloway, was droning on about algebra, and I was trying to focus on the numbers while staring out the window at the winter sky. Then the announcement came, that static tinny voice over the PA system. Attention students and staff. This is a lockdown. Repeat, lockdown. All students remain in your classrooms and follow lockdown procedures. At first everyone laughed nervously. We'd had drills before. It was nothing. But then the teachers' faces went pale. Mrs. Holloway's hands were shaking as she motioned for us to move quietly to the back corner of the classroom, away from the windows. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. This isn't a drill. Lock the door. Turn off the lights. Stay quiet. I remember thinking how surreal it all was. The room seemed to shrink as we huddled together. My friend Jenna was panicking. She kept whispering, "What if it's real? What if someone's in the building?" I wanted to tell her to calm down, but my stomach was twisting and the hairs on my arms were standing on end. Then I heard it. A soft, deliberate tapping on the window. At first I thought it was someone outside, maybe a janitor or a prankster. But then it moved. Slow, methodical, like fingers tracing the glass. Nobody else seemed to notice. I pointed, but Mrs. Holloway hushed me immediately. "Do not make a sound." "Do you hear me?" she whispered. I nodded, heart hammering. Minutes passed. Then more noises began. Faint shuffling in the hall, a soft creak of the classroom door that wasn't ours, like someone, or something, was moving just out of sight. We were all frozen. Jenna clutched my arm, whispering, "I don't want to die here." I wanted to reassure her, but I couldn't even convince myself. After what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes, a voice came over the PA again. "Students, please remain calm. Authorities are on the way." But there was something in the tone that made my blood run cold. It wasn't the same tinny voice as before. It was lower, guttural, almost as if it was distorted. The noises escalated. There were whispers in the hallways, low, incoherent, like dozens of people talking at once, but no one was there. And then a shadow flickered across the wall. Impossible because the lights were off. It lingered, elongated and unnatural before disappearing behind a closed door. I remember thinking, this can't be real. I'm hallucinating. But the fear in everyone else's eyes told me otherwise. Then came the first scream. Not one of panic, something primal, animalistic, echoing down the hall. The sound seemed to vibrate the walls, and I swear I could feel it in my chest. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The next hour was chaos. Not the chaos of screaming students or running teachers. This was silence punctuated by those sounds. Taps, whispers, shuffles, and the occasional low growl that seemed to come from the vents themselves. We stayed huddled, too terrified to peek, our phones useless in the dead zones of the building. When the police finally arrived, they stormed the hallways with flashlights and weapons drawn. Doors were kicked open. Teachers shouted, trying to corral students. But the hallways were empty. No intruder. Nothing. Every door, every locker, every room had been checked. Nothing. And yet, we all knew what we'd heard. In the weeks after, rumors spread. Some said it was a deranged former student. Others whispered darker things, spirits, demons, something that lived in the school after hours. The police found no evidence of anyone entering the building. Cameras outside showed nothing unusual. Even the windows where I'd seen the tapping were intact. No fingerprints, no smudges. I never got an explanation. The lockdown was officially called a false alarm, but nobody who experienced it ever believed that. Sometimes I drive past that school and see the windows in my old classroom. At night, when the street is quiet, I swear I see shadows moving behind them. And every time my chest tightens and I hear the tapping again. Soft, deliberate, patient. Waiting. To this day, I don't know what was in that school that day. I don't know if it was human or something else entirely. I only know the fear, the raw, suffocating terror of hiding in a dark classroom, listening to something unexplainable pacing the halls outside. And I'll never forget the sound that will haunt me forever. The deliberate, mocking tap, tap, tap on the window as if it knew I was there. I always thought my high school was just like any other. Gray walls, buzzing fluorescent lights, lockers lined up like soldiers, and a faint smell of old cafeteria food lingering in the hallways. I was 17 and had grown used to the creaks and groans of the building. It was old, sure, but nothing unusual until that day. It started like any other morning. I was late to second period, rushing down the corridor, backpack slung over one shoulder. The hall was quieter than usual, but I didn't think much of it. Just a few students scattered around, heads down, trying to get to class. The bell rang behind me, echoing strangely, almost like it bounced from some distant empty chamber rather than the walls around me. I slowed for a second, frowning, and that's when I saw it. The door at the end of the hall. It wasn't the door itself that startled me. It was the way the light beneath it flickered. A soft yellow glow pulsating, almost like the heartbeat of the building. I blinked and suddenly the hall behind me seemed longer, stretching, warping. I shook my head and chalked it up to fatigue, but a cold chill ran down my spine. Then the announcement came over the PA system. Lockdown. All students and staff initiate lockdown procedures immediately. Everyone froze. Some students looked around confused. Teachers ran to lock doors. I ducked into the nearest classroom with a group of others, my heart hammering. But something felt wrong. The classroom door didn't lock properly. The handle wobbled in my hand like it didn't want to stay closed. Finally, after a few tries, it held. We were trapped, or at least we thought we were safe. At first, nothing happened. But then I heard it, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway outside. Not the hurried shuffle of a student or staff member, but long, heavy steps that reverberated through the walls. I pressed my ear to the door, trying to hear, trying to make sense. The steps stopped. A silence so complete it made my ears ring. Then the whispering started. Low, faint, almost like 100 voices talking in unison, but no words I could understand. One by one, my classmates began to panic. A boy near the window whispered, "It's outside. I can hear it breathing." I wanted to laugh to tell him it was just nerves, but the sound of the breathing made me freeze. It was deep, wet, slow, not human, and then I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, a shadow slipping past the edge of the window. I spun to look, but there was nothing. Just the dim hallway, stretching farther than it should, with the light at the end flickering like a dying candle. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. Time didn't exist in that room. Every sound outside the door made us flinch. The scratching of nails against the lockers, the low moan of a vent somewhere above us, the soft whispering that seemed to come from inside our own heads. I huddled in a corner, knees to my chest, wishing I could disappear. Suddenly, the door handle rattled. Slowly at first, then with more force, like someone or something was testing it, learning its weaknesses. One of the girls screamed. Mrs. Langley, our teacher, tried to calm us, but her voice trembled, betraying her own fear. The rattling stopped. Silence. And then the footsteps began again, closer this time, echoing down the hallway directly outside our classroom. I realized something terrifying. The hallway wasn't behaving normally. Every time I looked toward the door, it seemed longer, stretching, distorting, like the building itself had warped around whatever was outside. I tried to call my parents. My phone had no signal. The Wi-Fi was gone. We were isolated, alone, trapped. Then the whispering started inside the room. Not outside, inside. I couldn't tell who it came from, but everyone was whispering at once. My name, your name, repeating it over and over. I covered my ears, screamed, but the sound didn't stop. The shadow returned. This time it slipped under the door. Just a thin, black smear across the floor, stretching toward us. It moved with intent. I felt its presence wrap around me, cold and suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Mrs. Langley tried to grab one of the students to calm them, but her hand passed through the shadow and she let out a scream that I'll never forget. It was like her body hit nothingness. She collapsed backward, eyes wide in sheer horror, and the shadow recoiled slightly, almost as if it was feeding on fear. We stayed like that, frozen, for what felt like forever. And then miraculously, the PA system crackled to life. A voice this time, official, calm, all clear. Lockdown over. Students may resume classes. We blinked. We waited. The hallway outside looked normal. The light at the end no longer flickered. Everything seemed ordinary again, but it wasn't. The door to our classroom wouldn't open. Not just stuck, it felt locked by some unseen force. We pushed, pulled, screamed. Nothing. And when one brave soul finally forced it open, the hallway outside wasn't the same hall we had entered. Lockers lined the walls, but the windows were gone, the ceiling lower, the air thick and musty. It didn't feel like the school anymore. We ran, all of us, down that hallway, which seemed to twist and turn in impossible ways. Doors led to rooms that shouldn't exist, old classrooms filled with dust, lockers that had rusted shut decades ago, staircases leading into pitch-black nothingness. We tried to retrace our steps, but every turn led deeper into the building, farther from safety. And then I saw it again. The shadow, this time fully formed, or as fully formed as it could be. A humanoid shape, stretched, elongated, moving impossibly fast. It followed, always at the edge of my vision, whispering my name, promising things I didn't want. I tripped, stumbled, and it loomed over me. My body froze. I couldn't move. Couldn't scream. Somehow I woke up outside the school hours later, alone. The hallway I had entered was perfectly normal. The front doors were unlocked, no police. No one had noticed anything amiss. The staff acted like nothing happened. My classmates, those I knew had been with me, claimed they had been homesick that day. I know it wasn't a dream. I can't explain it, and I don't want to. But sometimes when I'm alone at night, I see hallways in my apartment stretching, doors that shouldn't exist appearing, shadows at the edge of my vision whispering my name, and I know deep down that the building is still there, waiting for the next student to wander too far, to take the wrong hallway, to hear the whispers and realize too late that the school is alive, and it never lets anyone leave. I'll never forget the day the school went silent. Not the ordinary quiet between classes or the hush that falls over a library. It was a silence that seemed to press against your ears, your chest, even your skin. I was 17, a senior, and had spent most of my high school career convinced that nothing extraordinary ever happened in our town. That belief ended the morning the lockdown began. It started during homeroom. Our teacher, Mr. Green, was late and the class was joking around, throwing paper planes and laughing. The air smelled faintly of coffee from the teacher's lounge and the damp chill that always crept in from the hallway. Suddenly, the PA system crackled and a voice, metallic and distorted, announced, "Immediate lockdown. All students and staff initiate lockdown procedures. Lock all doors, stay quiet." Some kids groaned, rolling their eyes. We'd had drills before. They were routine, predictable. But when Mr. Green's face went pale and his hand shook as he reached for the door lock, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with winter air. The classroom door closed with a loud click, but as soon as it did, the noises began. At first, I thought it was someone running in the hallway, footsteps, echoes bouncing off the walls. But the sound wasn't normal. Heavy, uneven, dragging, like someone or something was moving with a weight that shouldn't exist. Then came the whispers. Low, urgent, almost frantic. I couldn't make out words, but it felt like the sound was crawling under my skin. I turned to look at my classmates. Some were frozen, staring at corners of the room. One girl, Mara, whispered, "Do you hear it? They're behind the doors." At that moment, I understood the sound wasn't in the hallway. It was coming from behind the doors. Not just our classroom door, but every door in the school. From the gym, the cafeteria, the empty offices. The building itself was alive with movement and whispers, and it knew we were here. Hours passed, though I don't think it was really hours. Time lost meaning. Every sound outside our door was a new horror. Scratching, tapping, muffled breathing, like hundreds of unseen eyes were watching us, waiting. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting grotesque shadows across the walls. I pressed my back against the corner, knees drawn to my chest, listening as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. At some point, the sound of the door handle rattling made me scream. My classmates joined in, panicked, but the rattling stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Then we heard something else, a slow, dragging shuffle along the floorboards. The sound circled the room, always moving, never stopping. I pressed my hands over my ears, praying, willing it to end, but it didn't. I don't remember how we stayed conscious. Only flashes, shadows in the corners that shouldn't exist, reflections in the window that moved independently of anything outside, murmurs that called our names and promised we'd be free if we only opened the door. And then the lights went out. Total darkness. It was worse than anything before. In the pitch black, every whisper, every scrape of nails across the floor, every soft breath seemed amplified. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in terror. And something else, something cold, wet, and patient brushing past me. Not a breeze, not a person. Something alive, waiting, watching. Mara screamed. I couldn't see her, but I felt her fall beside me. The whispers turned into laughter, high-pitched, cruel, echoing around us. The sound came from everywhere at once, from the floor, the ceiling, the walls. My ears bled from the intensity of it. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence fell. Absolute suffocating silence. No whispers, no shuffling, no laughter. Only my ragged breathing, the pounding of my own heart, and the distant mocking creak of a door opening somewhere in the school. I turned to look at the classroom door. It was open, not slightly, fully open, as if it had never been locked. My classmates hesitated. Nobody wanted to move first. The hallway outside was dark, longer than it should have been. Walls stretching impossibly, lockers twisted in shapes that defied logic. I remember taking the first step, then the second. The floorboards groaned under my weight, echoing down a corridor that shouldn't exist. Shadows flitted at the edges of my vision, just out of reach, and then I saw them, figures standing at the end of the hallway. Pale, featureless, barely human, their heads tilted unnaturally. They didn't move, but I could feel their eyes on me, waiting. I ran. My classmates followed, screaming, tripping, falling, but the hallway never ended. Every corner led to another stretch of hallway, another impossible corridor. My phone slipped from my hand. I didn't notice. No one noticed. The sound of our own voices seemed swallowed by the building, leaving only silence punctuated by the soft footfalls of the figures behind us. At some point, I got separated. I remember turning a corner and finding myself in a classroom I had never seen before. Dust thick in the air, desks overturned, chalkboards filled with writing that made no sense. And then I saw it, a door at the back slightly ajar. The same whispering came from behind it, soft and inviting. I opened it. I shouldn't have. Inside was darkness, deeper than the hallway, with a smell of damp decay. The whispering became coherent. You came. You came to us. Stay forever. And then the shadows moved. Figures poured out of the walls, the ceiling, the floor, everywhere at once. I screamed. I ran, and then I woke up outside the school, alone. The sun was setting. My phone was in my hand, no missing time. The school looked normal, no police. No one had noticed anything unusual. I tried to tell my parents, but the words came out jumbled, incoherent. I couldn't explain. Nobody believed me. Weeks later, I went back, just to see. The classroom where it all began was locked, and when I looked through the window, it was empty. Ordinary. But sometimes at night I hear whispers. From behind doors in my own home, from the corners of my room, shadows that move just out of sight. And I know somewhere that school is still alive, still waiting for the next student to open the wrong door, step into the wrong hallway, and never come back. I don't go near it anymore, but I hear the stories from others, students who disappeared for minutes or hours, returned dazed, silent, haunted. And I know the truth. Some doors are not meant to be opened, some hallways never end, and whatever waits behind them is patient, because it doesn't need to chase. It just waits.